Hello, FPL managers! We are back with a new episode of the FPL Optimized podcast. This is episode number 108. I am Bas, the casual manager, and my co host is Sertalp, the data scientist. This is the podcast in which we combine analytics with the good old eye test. Data or grass, or data and grass? That's the question. How are you doing, Sertalp, and how are things going over there in the US?
Thank you for asking. I'm doing fine. I'm a little bit under the weather, and obviously
Oh,
we had
again?
an. Well, when you have a kid in daycare, as I said,
Yeah,
you're always sick, right? Uh,
yeah,
in
I
US, we
guess.
had an election yesterday, so
Oh,
I mean,
really?
people are. Maybe you have heard about it.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
we did.
s- yeah, but yeah. Other than that, things are okay. I'm trying to distract myself with FPL a bit.
Yeah, let's do that. I think we'll just focus on football. That's what we talk about here.
hmm
And in any case, that gives us enough again to talk about. I'm pretty sure about that. And as always, let's start with our game week review. And I think you are pretty happy this week.
Yeah, I finished this game week with 75 points. Just to
Nice.
put into perspective, the safety score was 41 around my rank. So
Yeah,
I had like 34 points more than that. It meant I jumped from 3.6 million to 1.6 million, which
nice.
is quite a bit of jump. I mean, around I think my rank, the people are more cramped. There are lots of teams.
Yes.
So one good game week can, as you see, can change it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Uh, well, it was a great game week. I mean, I had to play Davis. He was on 15 points actually towards the end of the game, but he lost his clean sheet and a bonus. Finished
Ah,
with 10 points, still pretty good.
yeah.
Um, and also Bruno Fernandez finally returned some better
Yeah.
points. And Solanke
Yes.
got 16 points, so I was very lucky to have those two. But I think your game week was a little bit bad. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you mentioned Bruno. I'm wearing a United shirt today because Bruno is on my mind, and I think many people suddenly now have United players on their minds. But we've been saying that a few weeks ago already because their fixtures are getting better, and now also with yeah, let's say a few good results, and also of course a new manager coming in. I think more people will be looking at United, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, for me, 39 points, so not great. Could have been worse, I think, especially after Saturday, because it was a bit of a mixed weekend. Saturday was quite bad, at least from a fantasy point of view, because in reality it was quite good because I was at Anfield,
Mm-hmm.
as you know. I think I mentioned it last week. We were there with my kids and my wife, so we had a great time. But at the same time, I didn't own Salah, so after a lot of thinking and many players were in my mind. Gakpo, Darwin, Luis Diaz. I thought about all of them. Salah, whether I should bring one of them in or not. In the end, I didn't. I saved the transfer, so I just had Trent sitting there. In the stadium, Liverpool,
Mm-hmm.
Brighton. Quite nervous to see what the others were doing, especially Salah, of course. And to be honest, he didn't do that much.
Yeah.
But of course, he scored a great goal, and I guess that's what Salah is all about. Just a
Yep.
quality
Yep. Yep.
player who,
Yep.
who
Yep.
just needs one or two moments during a game to play a deciding role.
Yeah.
That's what he did. And
I thought
for
you would be buying Salah. To be completely honest with you, I thought
yeah,
that you would be
yeah,
leaning
I
towards
don't
that.
know.
But yeah,
Buying Salah would have meant selling Haaland, which of
yeah, I
course
can
now
see the
sounds like a
argument.
good idea. But I was thinking like Haaland against Bournemouth, it wasn't a bad game either. And I think if we look at the underlying numbers, actually, Haaland's numbers were better, all right, in terms of XG, and I think he had two or three big chances. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's just out of form. So this is, I guess, where form comes in. And Salah basically, yeah, he had one or two opportunities, and yeah, he scored a great goal. So
Yeah.
that's the difference. And of course, in hindsight, I would have liked to have Salah, but I didn't. So yeah, it
Yeah.
is what it
Yeah.
is.
It's just,
That was Saturday, and I think early on Saturday I also had my two Arsenal guys with Gabriel and Havertz. They also blanked away to
mm-hmm.
Newcastle. And Havertz also got a very late yellow card, so I think
Mm-hmm.
I was already feeling like, okay, this probably won't be my game week because if you see something like that happening, like I think it was a 96-minute yellow card, but just just one point less, but still. But Sunday was a bit better with Johnson and Rogers in the Spurs Villa game, both scoring a goal, so that was pretty good. So yeah, overall not great. I also lost some rank, which means I'll need to look at making some changes. And I'm also actually quite excited about that because I have 3 free transfers and I also have my wild card. So I think I'll maybe use 2 transfers this week and then wild card the week after. So I'm
Awesome.
looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, with that in mind, let's start looking forward and let's look at the fixture ticker.
Sure. But I will mention this. It is a little bit funny that you went to Liverpool, but after you come back, you're wearing a Manchester United jersey. It is as
Yeah.
if like you didn't like what you saw, and then you said,
No,
"Okay."
no, no. I was wearing the Liverpool shirt last week, so
No, I'm just
I
kidding.
always
Yeah.
look ahead. I always look ahead.
Okay,
But I
sounds good.
really, by the way, Anfield was great. If
Mm-hmm.
anyone can go there, to see a game, highly recommend it. I was really impressed. I've been to quite some stadiums in my life. This one was quite special and was good. And I must also say, by the way, that Brighton were quite impressive, especially the first half. Brighton
Mm-hmm.
was the better team. Even my wife said it during halftime. She doesn't know too much about football, but she told me
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hey, I think the other team is better," and I'm like, "Yeah, I think you're right." But then, that's also the strength of Liverpool. I think with Slot making 1 or 2 changes, he brought Luis Diaz in, and then so much attacking power. In about 10 minutes, they kind of turned the game around. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that's also really impressive of
Yeah.
Liverpool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's look at the ticker.
Sure. At the top, we again have Manchester City. Unsurprisingly, they have 4 good fixtures out of the 6. Uh,
Hmm.
their good fixtures are they are playing against Tottenham in Game Week 12, Nottingham Forest in 14, Crystal Palace 15, and Manchester United in 16. So they are in the top 10 percentile. But they are playing against Brighton. It is not a bad game, but
Hmm.
so their offense point average is 5.0 and defense point average is 4.0.
Hmm.
Like compare this to like their game against Nottingham Forest in 14, where the offense point average is 5.7 and defense point average is 4.9. So slightly lower, but still not a bad fixture.
Yeah.
In the second rank, we have Arsenal. They are playing against Chelsea. 3.3 and 4.4 are the defense and offense average projected points, respectively.
Hmm.
But they have a great fixture after that. They are playing against Nottingham Forest in 12 at home.
Yeah.
And Game Week 13, they have West Ham. Game Week 14, Manchester United. All of these are favorable fixtures. And another good fixture is coming up at the end of the horizon in Game Week 16 against Everton at home.
Hmm.
Liverpool is at the third place for this upcoming fixture against Aston Villa. Offensively, they look good. 5.2 is the average point for
Hmm.
offense, but for defense, it is 4.1. Still pretty good, but I think most of the focus will be on the offense here.
Yeah.
And then they play against Southampton in 12th, and that game is also marked as a favorable fixture. Then
Right.
they have 3 games. They're not exactly in the top 10%. So they play against Manchester City. That will be a tough one. Newcastle is a little bit of a question mark. Then Everton. Then finally they play against Fulham in game week 16. So that there's like 3 games of like bad or medium quality fixtures, and then they have a good one at the end of the horizon.
Yeah.
Tottenham has one of the best fixtures of this game week. They are playing against Ipswich at home.
Yeah.
5.7 is the offense point average and 4.3 is the defense point average. But as we mentioned, so they play against Manchester City right after that, and the points are pretty low, and it's actually
Okay.
a very unfavorable fixture. If you can bench your Tottenham defenders, that will be a good idea because their defense point average is 2.1, so we
Yeah.
expect them to concede goal or goals. But then they play against Fulham. Offensively, it's a good fixture with 5.2 point average.
Yeah.
And then rest of the horizon looks okay. At the fifth place, we have Manchester United. So they play against Leicester at home with 5.2 offense point average, which is pretty decent actually. This is also one of the good fixtures of the game week. So that's why I think we will see some of the Manchester United players both in the optimal wildcard team, also even in the
Yeah.
captaincy chart. Um,
Yeah.
and then they play against Ipswich in game week 12. Everton, then comes Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, and Manchester City. So there are like two tough fixtures, and in between there's also a nicer fixture. But yeah, we will see
Mhm.
how that will go as we get closer.
Yeah.
And then at the sixth rank we have Chelsea, and then comes Newcastle, Aston Villa, Brighton, and Bournemouth. These are the top
Mm.
10 teams in terms of fixture quality. Do you have
Yeah.
anything to add here?
Uh, well, maybe an observation that for City and Arsenal, as you said, the game against Nottingham is marked as really appealing
Mm-hmm.
offensively, but we see that Nottingham is actually third in the league at the moment,
Yeah,
right?
they're doing
Especially,
pretty well.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially thanks to a really strong defensive performance. So I think maybe the data is still a little bit undervaluing that.
Let's
Could that
see.
be?
Yeah, this is possible. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, since we are taking the ensemble of these models, we are not 100% sure how often they update their team strengths or
yeah,
how quickly they can catch up with the
yeah,
latest developments. But you're right. I mean, Nottingham
yeah,
Forest is actually going well, and some of these models in the ensemble, I'm sure they are a little bit slower than, well, obviously others in terms of updating the team strength.
yeah,
So yeah, that might be affecting it. Yeah, I will.
yeah,
I will have a look at the individual level,
yeah.
like which models are actually maybe
Yeah.
updated their projections about these games. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it changes all the time, of course, but
yeah, yeah.
it's quite surprising, of course, that Nottingham is doing so well this season. But especially FPL managers who went for Sels as a goalkeeper, and maybe also last game week for Aina in defense, or other Nottingham defenders have been doing quite well in recent
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
So that's something we need to, of course, keep in mind. Normally you would think, oh, Nottingham, an easy game, but this year it might be different, especially at
Mm-hmm.
this part of the season. And in general, I would say the form of City is something to be a little bit worried about. Also, if you look at the Champions League yesterday, they lost 4-1. Can't remember that they ever lost 4-1 in the Champions League. So it seems that in general they are still are they just a bit struggling at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Haaland, of course, missing a penalty, which doesn't happen too often. So I think that's a reason for concern.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been talking about that already, and I think there are already quite some FPL managers that sold Haaland or other City assets.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was watching the scores on Saturday, and I saw that they lost the clean sheet, and I was quite happy
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have a City defender. But then I looked at the goal scorer, and it was Guardiola again,
Mm-hmm.
and I still don't have him, so that hurts me every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the rest, well, what I just said about City, I think the same we can say about Arsenal. Also, a little bit struggling now with their form, especially away
Mm-hmm.
from home. Again, I was looking at the stats during Saturday on live score, and I saw almost until the end of the game they had zero shots on goal, which was really quite shocking, especially as a Havertz owner. I think they ended with one shot on goal, but that's of course not good enough for a
Yeah.
team like Arsenal,
Sure.
and they're really struggling away, which I think for me is a reason to sell Havertz this week. But let's see. Still a few
Okay.
days to
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, for the rest, Spurs, of course, as you said, a really good game this week. They do well at home, right? I think so far this season they've been doing well at home. Maybe not so good away. This is a home game against Ipswich. Usually they always score a few goals at home, Spurs, so that's looking
Hmm.
quite promising. And then, as you said, afterwards it's City. So I'm looking forward to it because I will probably have three Spurs players, and then I will use my wild card in game week 12. So then I could maybe sell one or two again.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
hopefully that will be a nice differential strategy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And maybe the last one to mention is Brighton there, but lower on the chart. But yeah, keep in mind that this is of course still the top half, and they're facing City now. So I think once the City game is out of the way, they will probably move up a bit on the chart, and the fixtures are looking quite good for them. And they have also been impressing this season.
Yeah.
Brighton. Okay, cool. Thanks for
Sure.
covering the fixture ticker, Sertalp.
Hmm.
Next thing to do today, and like we did last week, you've been sharing some really interesting charts on X on your account there. So let's pick one again to zoom in on it a bit more. And today we can maybe take your Transfer Tuesday chart, as it's called.
Hmm. So Transfer Tuesday charts, there are actually two parts to it. The first one is actually about replacements. So for this game week, I picked Haaland because I have noticed that people were selling him quite a bit. Lots of
Yeah,
people sold him
yeah,
because he was blanking. Even though like
yeah,
City has some good fixtures coming up, uh, yeah, people are kind of maybe trying to replace him with Salah and maybe even get Palmer to their team if they don't have
yeah,
those
yeah,
two. So yeah, whatever the reason, so we can have a look at what the best replacements are. So in this thing though, like it is a little bit difficult to say, oh, this is the best replacement because it all depends on which games you are planning to bench these players. Like maybe
yeah,
you will play them in every game, but if you look at the top right corner in this chart for people who are listening, it means that we are looking at the best projected points between game week 11 and 16 as the total. So this kind of assumes that you are making these players play in every game week for the next
mm,
6 game week. So Watkins is the best replacement with 31.07 projected point. So the second one is Isaac with 29.69.
mm-hmm,
And the third one is Solanke with 28.43. Obviously,
mm,
these are these are among all the forwards in the game. These are just the projected points, but you might be trying to replace him with a certain budget in mind. Like maybe you are trying to fit like two other premiums into your team so that maybe these players doesn't fit well to your team.
yeah,
Um, but if you look at the individual level, like the game week by game week level, Solanke is
yeah,
the best for game week 11 because they're playing against Ipswich, as we mentioned.
yeah,
For game week 12, Isaac is the best. He's playing
hmm,
against West Ham, but Watkins is also very close with little bit difference between the two. In game week 13, Wood is the best. Again, he's playing against Ipswich at home. Then we have Watkins in game week 14, playing against Brentford. Game week 15, it's Watkins again playing against
hmm,
Southampton, and in game week 16, it is Isaac playing against Leicester. So
mm-hmm,
depending on what you are trying to do, you can maybe even delay the transfer, or if you are trying to replace Haaland with one of the forwards, these are the best options. But if we
yeah,
look at the budget ones,
okay,
and well, it depends how you define the budgets, and obviously, like the price differences can mean more than we are how we are using it here. But if you are looking for forward options under 6.5 million, the best ones are Wood with 25.8 projected point over the 6 game weeks, and then Visa with 24.09, and then Raul Jimenez at the third place with 23.85. So as you see, I mean, there is some difference in terms of projected points, but still they are pretty good value, I should say. And we we see these players in the optimal wildcard team because of it.
Yeah.
So instead of spending your money for Haaland, you are able to now spread the funds a little bit and get overall better projected points for the entire team. And in
Yeah.
this category, I should quickly mention which players are the best for which game weeks. For game week 11, Wood is playing against Newcastle. He has the highest projected point at game week 11 among budget forwards. We have Raul in game week 12 against Wolves. In game week 13, it is Wood again against Ipswich.
Mm-hmm.
In game week 14, it is Raul against Brighton. In game week 15, it is Wood against Manchester United. And finally, in game week 16, it is Wood against Aston Villa. So we see Wood as the best budget option quite often. And then
Yeah.
Raul has two good fixtures, and Visa is good in average. I mean, he's
Right.
not the top option in any of these game weeks, but he's usually in the top three. So
Yeah. Yeah, Wood has been doing really well already so far,
yeah,
right? And
it was.
there's a guy in my mini league, one of the mini leagues, who has him. He's now number one in the mini league, and every week is Wood scoring goals for him. So that's good. Uh, with Wolves, I just struggle to decide whether Strand Larsen or Cunha is the one you should go for.
Mm-hmm.
Like last week, it was Strand Larsen who scored the goal. The week before, I think it was Cunha. So it's a bit difficult. I think Cunha has a bit more, hard to say, a bit more talisman, that he's more on the ball and he's more also taking free kicks and things like that. But Strand Larsen is more like the real number nine, yeah, who's maybe more likely to be on the right spot to score a goal. So yeah, two interesting options.
Yeah.
Um, and the
So
other thing, maybe, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think in the projected point models, Cunha is ahead of Strand Larsen.
Yeah,
Like in for the next 8 game weeks, Cunha's projected point sum is 35.1,
okay,
but Strand Larsen is 29.9. So like from a data point of view or projection model point of view, I think Cunha is
yeah.
better option. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm just checking the price. He's 6.7, so that's why he's not on the chart, because you
yeah,
went
mm-hmm.
until 6.5, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And then maybe from the previous chart, yeah, Isaac was there, and of course, maybe I think many of us started with Isaac when at the start of the season, but then Newcastle was a bit disappointing. He also got injured, but now in the last couple of weeks, he started scoring again. So indeed, I think we can see probably Isaac returning to our teams.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, something, it's good. It's good that it's shown here that we don't forget about it. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
same could be said about Watkins. Maybe got a bit lower on the radar lately, but Villa, of course, still a strong and attacking team and good fixtures coming up. So also Watkins, someone to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, great. Thanks for covering these charts. And as mentioned, you can follow Sertalp on X, because he's sharing a lot of this kind of information every day. Um, yeah, and I mentioned also already earlier, I have in mind to sell one of my attackers, probably Havertz. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the charts that you're showing are good for me, and maybe and probably also for many others. Solanke for me looks interesting, especially as a one game week punt, but maybe also to keep him a bit longer. And as I said, maybe even Haaland should be considered. Haaland is a tough one, right? Just you keep thinking that, well, you know how good he can be, so you kind of, you don't want to sell him. But yeah, he blanked. What is it? 4 times now.
I
Uh,
think so. Yeah.
yeah. Well, he scored last week, but still been a bit disappointing. So, and for especially for that price, of course, that's the whole thing about Haaland, right? At that price, more than 50 million, he really needs to deliver, because otherwise it's just not worth it. So, uh, but yeah, we'll see
Yeah.
what happens against Brighton. Okay, let's move on and let's look at the optimal team.
We are using the ensemble of models again here, and the optimal wildcard team with transfers are Onana in the goal. We have Gabriel, Dalot, Ait Nouri in defense.
Mm.
Saka and Bomo, Salah and Son in midfield. We have Raul, Wood, and Cunha in forward.
Mm.
And on
Okay.
the bench, we have Fabianski, Semenyo, Anderson, and Dunk.
Okay.
So there are three transfers scheduled for this team. The first one is Son is a single game week punt,
Okay.
and it sells in game week 12 Son for Palmer,
Yeah.
and in game week 13 it rolls the transfer, and in game week 14 it sells Onana for Raya and Dalo for Digne, and then this team keeps playing until the end of the horizon. With obviously like it's using all of the bench players, so there's like a full rotation here. But yeah, this is the team. But like looking at it, I mean, for my team value at least, the game week 14 transfers is actually exact money. Like it's leaves zero in the bank. Typically,
Uh,
these kind of plans are very risky, as you
yeah.
know. So like
Yeah.
if you don't have the money for that move, then everything gets a little bit difficult. But yeah, just wanted to mention. But what do you think about
Yeah.
this team?
Yeah, no, looks good. And I think similar to last week, right? It goes for the three budget forwards
Mm-hmm.
because there's just a lot of value there with Raul, Wood, and Cunha, especially also with the games that that they will have. I think especially Cunha now at home to Southampton. And by doing that, it allows you to have Son, Salah, and Saka in the midfield.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of let's say three premiums. And especially, of course, the game of Son against Ipswich at home is an interesting one. And I think this is like for me, like I want to get an extra Spurs player, and I have two options. I guess I could go for Son, or I should
Mm-hmm.
go for Solanke. And I guess many people will maybe thinking about what to do. Son was taken off quite early in the last game. Was it after like not even 60 minutes? So that's
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit of a minutes concern. Um, but yeah, he's of course yeah the big player there. So it can also be really interesting, as you said, to take that 1 week punt on him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, for the rest, no, quite interesting. I did expect maybe Bruno to be in the optimal team, but that's probably difficult at this price point. Yeah.
Yeah, might be. Uh, so yeah, this is
Yeah.
the raw optimal, but I guess if
Yeah.
you play around, you might find a team with
Yeah.
him in it. Yeah.
Can imagine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and Semenyo is still in it. I'm still quite happy that I kept him. I didn't sell him during the last couple of weeks
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I did have him on the bench. Unfortunately, also last game week he scored the goal against City, but yeah, he was stuck on my bench. But I'm still quite happy to own him because he's also playing a big role there for Bournemouth, and also Bournemouth, a bit like Nottingham, have been doing really well so far this season.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks for covering the optimal team. I think then we can move to the final data point, as always, which is the captaincy chart.
Yeah, I have two captaincy charts this week. The first one is for only
Right.
game week 11. First of all, let's cover that one. I
Yeah,
was thinking, like, without looking at this, I was thinking Son would be picked as the best captain, but then I
yeah,
compiled the data. I took the averages. Salah is actually ahead.
yeah.
Salah is the top option with 7.3 in the ensemble of models, but
Okay.
there's quite a bit of disagreement between models. So
Yeah.
only Fantasy Football Hub and Scott has Salah as the best option. Fantasy Football Fix and FPL Review has Son as the best option. And Mikel Toklam's model actually favors Bruno Fernandes as the top
Hmm.
captaincy option this week. In the second rank in the ensemble, we have Son with 7.0. So there's like 0.3 point difference between Salah and Son in the average. Then comes Haaland with 6.5. Then Solanke at 6.0. And finally, Bruno Fernandes is fifth with 5.8. But yeah, it's a little bit interesting. So, who do you think is the best captain? Like, let me ask you. Like, if you had both Salah and Son, like, who would you captain?
I think I would go for the better fixture, which is
Mm.
Son Ipswich at home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Salah is, of course, the informed player, but Villa is a strong team, even though it is at Anfield. Liverpool is having an interesting week with three home games. They had the Brighton game, and then also yesterday Champions League at home, and now Saturday again at home. or in the weekend. I'm not sure if it's Saturday. It is Saturday, yeah. So yeah, yeah. I mean, thin margins, but I would go for a Spurs
Yeah.
player. I might. I think I will go for Solanke if I bring him in. Then I think I will also captain him actually. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And
That sounds
you?
good.
Probably
Um,
Salah.
I mean, I typically use FPL reviews model, so I
Okay.
think Son. I probably would go with Son too. I mean,
All right.
not yeah, but yeah,
The
it's a little
difference is
bit
not so big, I see, though, right?
yeah, but I don't
Difference.
have Son, so I think it will be
No.
Salah for me. Anyway, so
All right. Okay, man. That will be. I will be scared again during that game. Then I will be watching against Salah.
yeah.
I don't recommend that actually. I was going to Anfield, which is a great experience, but then when Salah scores a goal, on the one hand you're happy, and on the other hand you immediately think, "Oh shit, I don't have him." This FPL game is really sometimes, yeah, difficult to deal with, right? From a mind tricks point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, for the elections, I have heard people who betted for the opposition candidate that they are
Oh,
not voting for as an emotional insurance. So if that
okay.
candidate wins, then you know that like at least you are getting something out of it. So I guess for you
Yeah.
it was similar. Like if Liverpool didn't
Yeah.
score, then you're like, okay, good for me in FPL. If they
Yeah.
score, you're like, okay, I was here, then I
Yeah.
watched the
Yeah.
nice game.
Yeah, there were a few jokes on X because I posted my picture of Anfield, well, that I was there and that I didn't own Haaland. I said, there's a bit of FOMO kicking in. And I think someone says, you will probably be cheering when Salah gets subbed with 0 points. And I say, yeah, indeed, I will. But then he scored a goal, so that was the opposite. Yeah. But okay. All right. And I think you
Okay.
had another chart, right?
Yeah, and then I was also sharing this captaincy chart, so I thought maybe it is also good to mention in the podcast. And this one is about the captaincy for the long term, not for a single game week, but what happens if you look at the next 8 game weeks for captaincy. In the ensemble of models out of these 8 fixtures, Salah appears 4 times as the best captaincy option, and those
Mm.
game weeks are 11, 12, 15, and 18. And Palmer and Haaland both like each appear twice. Palmer is the best captain in game week 13 against Aston Villa, while Liverpool and City are playing against each other. And then the second one is game week 17 against Everton, and Haaland is the best in game week 14 against Nottingham Forest and game week 16 against Manchester United. So if you look at just the sum of all these, Salah is ahead in the ensemble of models. But
Okay.
I mean, if you are watching on YouTube or if you can visit my profile, I will probably share these tomorrow. So again, there's like some kind of disagreement between models about which players are actually better.
Uh-huh.
So there's little consensus from game week to game week. Like for example, we talked about this game week, but the same scenario next game week. Even though Salah is better in average, Fix and Hub has Haaland as the best option, and Mikael Tokvam has Palmer as the best option.
Mm.
Even in game week 13, where almost every model thinks Palmer is the best option, Mikael Tokvam has Mbomo as the best option against Leicester. Same with the rest of the horizon. I mean, there's quite a bit of a disagreement again.
Mm.
Only game week where every model agrees is game week 18, where Liverpool plays against Leicester, and
Oh, yeah.
that game week Salah is the optimal captain everywhere in both of all of these models. So yeah, I mean, this is probably something to keep in mind, especially if you are wildcarding or trying to switch your premium player.
Yeah.
I think the appeal of selling Haaland and fitting both Salah and Palmer into your team is to
Yeah.
get a pretty nice captaincy rotation.
Yeah.
Because whenever you can captain Salah, like game week 13, where the projected point is quite low, you can captain Palmer, and then you won't be far. So yeah, something to keep in mind, I guess.
No, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And I think some people already have been doing that, right? Moving budgets around by selling
Mm-hmm.
Haaland. And I think the others, like myself, who still have Haaland, definitely I think have it on our minds to as I said, let's give him another chance. But at some point, yeah, we will be selling him, and then of course you can do other things with that budget. And a similar discussion, maybe something to have next week, is around premium defenders because in my team I still have Trent, but I also have Pedro Porro, and so far they have been doing nothing or very little. So that's also something I think we need to take a look at. Like, is which defenders are maybe still worth their premium, at least based
Yeah.
on the results so far, or of course based on the projected data. Because yeah, it could be better maybe to go for the cheaper alternatives and then go for the premiums in midfield as
Yeah. Yep.
that's where we have really attractive options as we all know. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
All right, very useful. Thanks a lot, Sertop.
Sure.
I think we can finish with our mini league update.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's do that. And yeah, we did close the league. We announced it last time that we would close it, and now we did it. So you cannot join anymore. Hope we're not disappointing anyone, but well, you had long enough to join, I would say. We have a final number of 594 teams in it, so that's quite a big number. And thanks everyone for joining our league. The number one stayed the same. It's Ski Karde with his team Okoli Dokoli. He had a game week score of 52 points and now is on 703 points in total, which makes him the number 451 in the game. So, yeah, well done, Ski. Keep it up. Number two is a new name in our top three. It's James Coupland with his team JCFC. And he had a really good game week, like you had, Sir Top. He had 73 points, and he's now on 689 points in total. So that's just 14 points behind our number one. And then number three is last week's number two. That's Lee Garnett, and he dropped a place, therefore, and he had a score of 45 points. That's why he dropped, but he's still in the top three. Well done, and keep it up, everyone. The season is still quite long, as we know. That's it for today. Thanks again for tuning in. Next week, it will be the international break, another one, unfortunately. I have the feeling nobody is looking forward to that, but it is what it is. But please do subscribe to our podcast. We might have another episode next week, so yeah, then you will get a notification when it's published. You can also follow us on X. For Sertalp, it's at Sertalp Bilal, and for me, it's at Belfi BB. And we also have the separate account for our podcast, which is at FPL Optimized. And you probably also know by now that fploptimized.com is also a website where you can go to find several charts and tools and data which can help you with your decision making. And for the people who are listening to the podcast, please also take a look on YouTube because you can also actually see us there. That's FPL Optimized on YouTube. That's it for today.
And before I close, again, I will mention the London Analytics Meetup on November 23rd at 12 p.m. At the Thirsty Bear pub. And until next time, stay curious and stay analytical. Goodbye.